We're officially live. We'll give everybody just a second to kind of funnel in here as you join in. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you can hear me okay, see me okay, all the stuff, comment. Let me know where you're watching from. This is a live stream, meaning that first and foremost it's live, and I do them live because it gives me the ability to interact with you. So go ahead and hit that like button. Let me know that you're joining in here, and we're going to dive into our topic of why content is not king. And this is sort of controversial. I've been saying this for a while now, that content is not king. And it's funny because I just saw who was it? Neil Patel put out some content where he has come on the bandwagon and started saying this. I shouldn't say bandwagon, because I've been saying it for a while and just recently saw Neil Patel say it. And it's very true, though. And it was interesting because he was actually making some of the same recommendations that I've been making for years around content, and why the current strategy of just blog all the time is not a good strategy. Even if they're quote unquote good blogs, it may not actually help you. And I'm going to talk about what I've seen both in my own situation and with other people I've worked with, why content is not king, and content can actually hurt you in your rankings. So if you're excited about that, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button for me, and we're going to dive in. So why do I say that? Why do I say content is not king? Well, number one, it goes back to that same story I've told a million times. I've met somebody that worked for Google, became good friends with them. They had an NDA contract with Google, but I would overhear things because they'd work from home. And I realized that the content wasn't really what Google was most concerned about. It was actually more so, and why this is relevant is because that person was actually part of the team that was being used to train the AI algorithm. It's harder to say than you might think. They were part of that team, and so what they were largely being trained on, and what they were part of doing, was how do you satisfy user intent. And what I realized over the years is, like, you can have a lot of content that doesn't necessarily satisfy user search intent, and Google wants you to not only satisfy the user's intent, but realistically they want to see that you're satisfying the user's intent. They want to see that the visitor is engaging with your site. And so what's grown up over the last several years in terms of SEO is, like, people are doing this strategy where, oh, well, just blog a lot. If you just blog and blog and blog and blog, and you do your best pediatricians in X city, which is a real strategy, and you do all these blog posts, that you'll somehow outrank the competition and you'll get all the business. And the problem with that is, even those articles that do tend to rank, is there's a super low conversion rate. So, like, if you're doing a blog post that's not directly related to your niche, the conversion rate on those is incredibly low. And so that's one reason why that strategy is not great. The other reason it's not great is because what has sort of been taught is, if you blog enough, that for some reason Google will see how much you're blogging and therefore rank your website for, like, local keywords, like, Virginia wedding photographer, or your location wedding photographer. And that's not the case. Google is not a volume-based algorithm. And to drive that point home, Google released the helpful content update, which changes the game quite a bit, I think, in a good direction, because now Google is actually penalizing people for having content that isn't engaging. And so content itself is not king. So what is king? What's king? If content is not king, what is? Well, in this context, when it's talking about SEO, it's connection. Connection is king. Connection is represented in engagement. So if people are engaging with your website, and they can sort of spend some time on it and interact, and it's drawing them in, pulling them in. They're not just landing on your website and leaving. They're actually engaging with it. They're connecting with you and your brand. If that's happening, then Google's going to be impressed with your website. So the problem is, you can actually have a lot of content, and that content isn't getting engaged with, and it can actually hurt you. And so if there was anything else ever that needed to be said to show that content is not king, it's the fact that you can actually hurt your rankings by publishing a lot of content. This is one of the reasons why I'm against that whole blog until your fingers bleed strategy. And it's not just me saying this. I mean, I've even noticed like some of the old blogs that I've posted whenever, and I had some blogs that were not completely relevant to what, we were trying to rank for in terms of wedding photography. And I noticed like these patterns over time where as my website would rank higher, a lot of those blog posts would actually rank lower. It was almost like there was an inverse relationship. And then the flip side, a lot of times when those, for lack of a better word, irrelevant blogs would rank higher, my website, like my homepage that I was trying to rank for keywords related to wedding photography, would rank lower. And so it seemed almost like there was this inverse relationship. And then, take that with what we've seen over the years, where we've seen that people are ranking not just page one, but like even spots number 1, 2, 3 without doing a bunch of blogging. Like in competitive markets for incredibly competitive keywords. So, I'm looking at it going, okay, well, they're up against people that are doing a lot of blogging. So we just know that putting out tons of content is not the way to rank on Google. What is the way, though, is to not only be super clear with Google and your ideal clients, but to have content that is engaging. So you don't want too much content. You don't want too little. You want the right amount. And you can really only arrive at that by, number one, it's best to understand just sort of the things that work in terms of like your website layout. But if you've got a decent website layout, it's then taking the time to look at how people are interacting with your website with tools like Google Analytics. There's a number of other ones out there that we talk about inside of our live streams and inside of some of our content that insider members have access to. Of course, our dream clients, mentorship members, we walk through all this stuff together. But you need to look at how people are interacting with your website. You need to look at where people are not engaging with your website, and you need to fix those areas. You need those areas to either maybe a section needs to be removed. Maybe you need to fix the copywriting. It really depends on what they're doing. But you need to be able to identify those areas where people are not engaging. Then you need to fix those areas, whether it's the copywriting, the messaging, the branding, the aesthetics, whatever it may be. You need to come up with solutions for that particular area. And, we've seen for the most part, for someone to rank on page 1 of Google, typically their homepage needs to have an engaged session time of somewhere around 50 seconds. This can be seen in Google Analytics. So that's just sort of like one little benchmark that you should be looking for. And that it doesn't mean if you reach 50 seconds, you will for sure reach page 1 of Google, because this is not just one thing. It's, okay, are you being clear with Google? Is your website laid out in a way that is creating engagement, but does Google clearly understand which page should be ranking for what? For example, a lot of times we see people, their homepage is not creating very much engagement. So they'll have this homepage that people come to, but then they just immediately go up in navigation and go to another page, which is telling Google, oh, hey, maybe you should actually sort of compare this page to the original page that they originally found, because, they didn't really engage with that one and they clicked over to this other one. And now they're engaging with that one. So there's tons of things that could be going on, but simply put, you need to figure out what is Google doing on your website, or excuse me, what are your visitors doing on your website, because Google's watching. Where are they not engaging? Because there's not any connection going there. And then you need to have the storytelling and character development skills, the copywriting skills, the conversion aesthetic skills to be able to make changes to those key areas of your website. And this is in strong contrast to just doing a complete website redesign. We've seen people go through complete website redesigns. They come in, sometimes they'll book a call with me, do a Zoom session, and they're like, yeah, I just did this big website redesign and spent a bunch of time and or money on, and my website's ranking worse. It's not converting even as good as my older website. It's like, well, your older website might have had more going for it, even though it wasn't aesthetically as pretty. It might have conversion-wise been even better. And so the point is like, you should really only be changing what you actually need to. And if you aren't measuring the engagement on your site, you're not going to know which parts are good, and you're not going to know which parts are neutral, and you're not going to know which parts are bad. And so like the big thing that I've done over the years, and this is why we have such good results, partially, one of the reasons, is because we've looked at like, what are the highest performing websites doing What are those patterns? Extracting them, and then helping people apply those patterns to websites that aren't ranking very well, and then fine tuning what they're doing in order to replicate high levels of engagement. So, again, just kind of going back to the original topic of content is not king. Why? Why is content not king? Because content doesn't necessarily equal engagement, because content doesn't necessarily create connection. Your messaging, your branding, the psychology that you've used to craft the message on your website will create the connection. If it creates the connection, it will also, therefore, make it good content, but it's going to create engagement. So when content is creating engagement, it's good. If it's not, then it's actually hurtful. And sometimes that means you want to get rid of it. Either you want to doctor it up and fix it, or you want to get rid of it. But when you're following a strategy that is just blog and blog and blog and blog and blog, you don't ever really fine tune that content. And so you've just got a bunch of content, and that content's not getting good engagement. And so it's actually hurting your rankings. And so that's why typically we see people, if they blogged a lot, it's actually hurt their rankings more than it has helped their rankings. Now, they might be ranking for more keywords than they were before they started blogging, but not all keywords are created equal. Some keywords are just trash. They're not worth anything. And so I've seen many people take some, SEO course or whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm ranking for so many more keywords, or even getting more traffic. And yet it's like, well, but how many of those visitors are turning into paying customers? And if they're even tracking them, typically it is zero. And so that's why we've had people come in and say, yeah, I did this program or course. I've been working on my SEO for a year or 2 or 6. And we spot the problems. And then we go, oh, yeah, well, you need to focus more on creating engagement on the site with the content that you have, and getting rid of old bad stuff that's not engaging, and just be clear with Google, clear with your visitors. And then suddenly, and sometimes they rank in as little as like 3 weeks, first page of Google. We're talking about for valuable competitive keywords. We've seen that, for example, like Utah wedding photographer. We've seen that in, we've seen it in, I want to say, Delaware. We've seen it in maybe Philadelphia, a few different places, DC, I want to say even. We've seen people, again, they've struggled with SEO for years and years and years. When they stop that blog till your fingers bleed, that's based on the old content is king lie, we've seen those people's SEO turn around very quickly once they start implementing a strategy based on connection and engagement. So hopefully that makes sense. And if you guys got, questions or anything that you are curious about as we talk about this, feel free to go drop it into the comments. I'm going to go over to the comments here in a second. Just make sure we don't have any questions or anything. But I just want to encourage you guys, like, if you're creating content for content's sake, you can stop. You don't need to do that. Instead, you should be looking at how people are interacting with your website, figuring out where it doesn't get good interaction, and then come up with data-driven solutions in order to increase that engagement. And these can be micro solutions. I've seen sometimes people change even just like the sizing of an image and text, and that have a drastic impact on how much people interact with the website. I mean, it could be profound results from minor changes, but we have to isolate those areas and then ask the question, well, why aren't people engaging? Then when we've done enough of those little micro changes, the engagement's going up, that's when your website starts performing better, because people are actually engaging with it. And if they're engaging, they're developing a clear picture of who you are in light of who they are. And that creates the connection that makes them want to spend more money with you as well. And so true SEO is not just keywords and backlinks and blogging. True SEO is, how do we help sort of nurture someone down a pathway to have clarity on who we are and who they are, so that it feels like a step towards investing in themselves to move forward with us. So as they learn about us, and they learn about our process, and they learn about our philosophy, and they start to read into the stories that we tell, they just go deeper and engage more, and it maximizes how much engagement your website gets as a whole. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. If you're new here, welcome. Glad that you're here. We do these live streams every week. We do them currently Tuesdays at 5 p.m. And so we keep that on a pretty regular schedule. And so be sure to mark your calendars so that you can join us for all the upcoming ones. That being said, thank you guys for being here. I'll see you next time. And here's to you not wasting all your time on content, but focusing more on connection. Until next time, bye for now.